I sat in the lawyer's office, watching my cousins' faces light up as they heard their portions of Grandpa's will. Sarah got the farmhouse, all 3 stories of Victorian charm. Mike inherited the 100 acres of prime farmland. Jenny received the modern John Deere tractor and all the working equipment. Then came my turn. "To my grandson Jake," the lawyer read, adjusting his glasses, "I leave the old International Harvester combine in the back field." The room fell silent. Then Mike snorted. "The rust bucket? That thing hasn't run since the 80s. Sarah shook her head sympathetically. "I'm sorry, Jake. Maybe we can help you sell it for scrap metal." I forced a smile, trying to hide my disappointment. After 30 years of visiting Grandpa's farm, helping with harvests, listening to his stories, this was what I meant to him? A broken-down machine that everyone called an eyesore? The lawyer cleared his throat. "There's also this note." He handed me an envelope with my name written in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. As my cousins discussed their windfall, I slipped the note into my pocket. Outside, I could see the combine through the window, a massive red beast sitting alone in the tall grass, its paint faded and metal oxidized by decades of weather. "Don't worry about it, Jake," Jenny said, patting my shoulder. "At least you got something. Something. Right." But as I walked to my truck, Grandpa's words echoed in my memory. "Sometimes the most valuable things look worthless to everyone else, son. Remember that." I pulled out the envelope, my hands trembling slightly as I tore it open. The note was brief, written in Grandpa's familiar scrawl. "Jake, don't let them see you cry over this old machine. She's got more secrets than a politician's diary. Check the grain tank. Look for the loose panel on the left side. What you find there will change everything. Trust me, boy, your old grandpa knew what he was doing. Love, Grandpa Earl." I read it 3 times, my heart pounding. The grain tank? I'd climbed all over that combine as a kid, but I'd never noticed any loose panels. That evening, I drove back to the farm. My cousins were celebrating at the farmhouse, their laughter carrying across the fields. I parked near the combine and grabbed a flashlight from my glove compartment. The machine looked even more decrepit up close. Rust had eaten through parts of the metal, and weeds grew up through the gaps in the chassis. But as I walked around to the left side of the grain tank, my flashlight beam caught something interesting. There, about chest high, one panel looked different from the others. The rust pattern was wrong, and when I pressed against it, it gave slightly. I found a screwdriver in my truck and carefully worked around the edges. The panel wasn't welded like the others. It was held in place by hidden clips. After 10 minutes of careful prying, it popped free. Behind it was a metal box, about the size of a shoebox, wrapped in plastic and sealed with tape. My hands shook as I pulled it out. Whatever was inside felt heavy, substantial. I looked back toward the farmhouse, making sure no one was watching, then carried the box to my truck. This was just the beginning. Back at my apartment, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the sealed box. The plastic wrapping was thick, professional grade, and the tape showed no signs of age or deterioration. Grandpa had prepared this carefully. I cut through the wrapping with a kitchen knife, my heart hammering against my ribs. Inside was a metal document box with a combination lock. Taped to the top was another note. "Your birthday when you turned 16. You'll remember." I smiled despite my nervousness. My 16th birthday, the day Grandpa taught me to drive the old Ford pickup around the farm. The combination was easy, 07-1589. The lock clicked open. Inside were documents, photographs, and what looked like official certificates. But sitting on top was a letter addressed to me, dated just 3 months ago. "Jake," it began, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you found my little treasure hunt. What you're about to discover will shock you, but I need you to understand the whole story before you do anything." I picked up the first document underneath. It was a certificate of authenticity from the Smithsonian Institution. My eyes scanned the formal language until I found the key phrase, confirms this 1975 International Harvester 1480 combine as the prototype unit, serial number 001, the first of its kind ever manufactured. My hands began to tremble. I grabbed the next document, an appraisal from a vintage farm equipment expert dated 2 years ago. The estimated value made my vision blur. $12 to $15 million, I whispered to my empty kitchen. The combine wasn't just old farm equipment, it was history. Grandpa's letter continued for 3 pages, telling a story I'd never heard. In 1975, he hadn't just been a farmer. He'd been a test pilot for International Harvester's new combine design. The company had chosen him because of his engineering background and his reputation for careful, detailed work. They gave me the very first one off the line, he wrote. Serial number 001. I tested it for 2 full seasons, documenting everything. When they were satisfied with the design, they asked for it back to put in their corporate museum. But I'd grown attached to that machine, Jake. It had helped me save the farm during those hard years. So I made them a deal. I'd buy it from them at full retail price, and they could build another one for their museum. They agreed, thinking I was crazy for wanting to pay full price for a used machine. I flipped through more documents. Purchase receipts, correspondence with International Harvester executives, even a photo of Grandpa shaking hands with company officials at some kind of ceremony. Over the years, I got calls from collectors and museums wanting to buy it. The offers kept getting bigger. But I kept saying no. That machine represented something important. The moment when farming technology took a giant leap forward. I wanted it to stay in the family. But I also knew that none of your cousins would understand its value. They'd see dollar signs and sell it to the highest bidder. You're different, Jake. You understand that some things are worth more than money. I set down the letter and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow, I'd have to decide what to do with this information. I couldn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours on my laptop, researching everything I could find about prototype farm equipment and vintage machinery auctions. What I discovered made Grandpa's appraisal seem conservative. A 1970 prototype John Deere had sold for $8 million in 2019. A one-off Case IH experimental model had brought in $6 million just last year. But those were smaller machines, less historically significant than what I now owned. The International Harvester 1480 had revolutionized farming. It was the first combine to feature the rotary threshing system that became industry standard. Every modern combine harvester could trace its lineage back to this exact machine sitting in Grandpa's field. I found articles about it in farming magazines from the 70s. There were technical papers written about its innovations. I even found a documentary from the History Channel that mentioned it as the machine that changed agriculture forever. But here's what made it even more valuable. International Harvester had gone out of business in the 80s. The company no longer existed, making any of their prototype equipment exponentially more collectible. I called in sick to work and drove back to the farm at dawn. I needed to see the combine again, to really look at it with new eyes. Walking around it in the morning light, I could see details I'd missed before. The serial number plate was still there, though tarnished, IH 1480001. The original International Harvester logos were faded but visible. Even in its deteriorated state, the machine's revolutionary design was apparent. This wasn't just farm equipment. It was a piece of American industrial history. "You've been spending a lot of time with that old rust bucket," Mike said, walking up behind me. I'd been so absorbed in examining the combine that I hadn't heard him approach. I straightened up, trying to look casual. Just trying to figure out if it's worth fixing up. He laughed. "Jake, that thing would cost more to restore than it's worth. Why don't you just let me call the scrapyard? I know a guy who'll give you $500 for the metal." "I'm not ready to scrap it yet. Come on, man. Be practical. Use that $500 as a down payment on something useful." He kicked at one of the massive tires. This thing is taking up space that could be used for real equipment. Sarah joined us, carrying a cup of coffee. We were talking last night, Jake. We feel bad about how the will worked out. If you want, we can help you get a lawyer to contest it. Grandpa obviously wasn't thinking clearly at the end. I felt my jaw clench. Grandpa was sharp as a tack until the day he died. But this? Mike gestured at the combine. This is just cruel. Leaving you a broken machine while we got actual valuable property? If only they knew. But Grandpa's letter had been clear about keeping the secret until I decided what to do. He'd written, "Don't tell them until you're ready. Once they know what it's worth, everything will change." "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully. "But I'm going to hold on to it for now." Mike shrugged. "Your choice. But don't say we didn't try to help." I needed professional confirmation before making any decisions. Using the contact information from Grandpa's documents, I reached out to Dr. Margaret Chen, the vintage farm equipment expert who had done the original appraisal. She agreed to meet me at the farm the following Saturday. Dr. Chen was a small woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and calloused hands. She walked around the combine like a detective examining evidence, taking photos and making notes. "Your grandfather was right to keep this quiet," she said finally. "I've been in this business for 30 years and I've never seen anything like it." She pointed to various features that I'd never noticed. "See this threshing mechanism? This was the prototype for what became standard on every combine made after 1976. And this grain handling system? Pure innovation. The condition is actually better than it looks," she continued. "The rust is mostly surface level. The important mechanical components are protected and intact. With proper restoration, this machine could actually run again." She pulled out a tablet and showed me recent auction results. The market for prototype agricultural equipment has exploded in the last 5 years. Collectors are paying premium prices for historically significant machines. "What's your current estimate?" I asked. "Conservative estimate? 12 million. But if you get the right buyers in a bidding war?" She shrugged. "Sky's the limit. There's only one of these in existence, and it represents a pivotal moment in agricultural history." As she packed up her equipment, she handed me a business card. "When you're ready to sell, call me. I know exactly which auction house to use." That night, I sat in Grandpa's old rocking chair on the farmhouse porch. Sarah had given me permission to use it while I figured out what to do with that eyesore. I reread Grandpa's letter, focusing on the final paragraph. "Jake, I'm not telling you what to do with this machine. Maybe you'll sell it and use the money to build something wonderful. Maybe you'll donate it to a museum where people can learn from it. Maybe you'll restore it and keep it running for another generation. The choice is yours. But whatever you decide, make sure it's for the right reasons. Money is just a tool. What matters is what you build with it." I thought about my life. I was 43, working a job I didn't love, living paycheck to paycheck in a cramped apartment. $12 million could change everything. I could buy a house, travel, maybe start the woodworking business I'd always dreamed about. But I also thought about Grandpa's stories, his pride in being part of agricultural history. This machine represented something bigger than money. My phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Mike. "Scrapyard guy can come Monday if you want. Just say the word." I looked out at the combine, silhouetted against the sunset. For 70 years it had sat in this field, keeping its secrets. Grandpa had trusted me with those secrets. Tomorrow, I'd make my choice. But first, I had one more thing to do. Sunday morning, I called a family meeting. Sarah, Mike, and Jenny gathered in the farmhouse kitchen, probably expecting me to finally agree to scrap the combine. "I have something to tell you about Grandpa's machine," I began. Mike rolled his eyes. "Jake, we've been over this. It's junk." "Actually, it's not." I pulled out Dr. Chen's appraisal report. "It's worth $12 million. The silence that followed was deafening. Jenny was the first to speak. "That's not possible." I spread out the documents on the kitchen table, the Smithsonian certificate, the historical documentation, the auction comparisons. It's the prototype International Harvester 1480, the first one ever made. Grandpa was the test pilot. Sarah's face had gone pale. 12 million? You're serious? Dead serious. I've had it professionally appraised. Mike grabbed the papers, scanning them frantically. This changes everything. We need to contest the will. There's no way Grandpa meant for you to get something this valuable while you got exactly what he intended, I interrupted. He knew what this machine was worth. He chose to give it to me. But that's not fair, Jenny protested. We should split it equally. I looked at each of them, seeing the greed already taking hold. This was exactly what Grandpa had predicted. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. I'm going to auction this machine, and I'm going to use part of the proceeds to do something Grandpa would have wanted. What? Sarah asked suspiciously. I'm going to establish a scholarship fund for kids from farming families who want to study agricultural engineering. The Earl Thompson Memorial Scholarship. Their faces fell as they realized I wasn't planning to share the windfall. 3 months later, I stood in the auction house in Des Moines, watching wealthy collectors and museum representatives examine the restored combine. I'd spent $50,000 having it professionally cleaned and detailed, bringing back its original red paint and chrome accents. The machine looked magnificent under the auction house lights, every inch of it gleaming. A placard next to it told its story. 1975, International Harvester, 1480 prototype, serial number 001, the machine that changed agriculture. Dr. Chen had been right about the market. Pre-auction estimates had climbed to 15 million, and she'd whispered to me that morning that private collectors had been making inquiries about post-auction purchases if they didn't win. The auctioneer took the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, lot number 47. This is truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own a piece of agricultural history. Bidding started at 5 million. Within minutes, it had climbed to 8 million. 2 museum representatives were locked in a fierce battle with a private collector from Texas. 10 million, called the Texan. 11 million, countered the Smithsonian representative. 12 million, the Texan shot back. The room held its breath. The Smithsonian representative consulted with someone on his phone, then shook his head and sat down. 12 million going once, going twice. 13 million. A new voice from the back of the room. A woman I didn't recognize wearing an expensive suit. The Texan hesitated, then raised his paddle. 14 million. 15 million, the woman replied without hesitation. The Texan shook his head and lowered his paddle. Sold for $15 million? The woman who bought the combine introduced herself as Catherine Morrison, CEO of Morrison Agricultural Foundation. We're going to restore it to full working condition and tour it around the country, she explained. Children need to see how innovation in agriculture has shaped their world. After taxes and auction fees, I walked away with just over $12 million, more money than I'd ever dreamed of having. The first thing I did was establish the Earl Thompson Memorial Scholarship with $2 million. The fund would provide full college scholarships for 50 students every year, focusing on kids from small farming communities who wanted to study agricultural engineering or sustainable farming practices. I bought a modest house on 20 acres outside town, nothing fancy, but with a workshop where I could finally pursue my woodworking dreams. I also set aside money to travel, to see the world beyond the farm fields I'd grown up around. My cousins barely spoke to me anymore. They'd hired a lawyer to contest the will, but it was ironclad. Grandpa had been very thorough in his planning. 6 months after the auction, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a photo of the restored combine at a county fair in Nebraska, surrounded by children who were climbing on it and learning about farming history. A note from Catherine Morrison was attached. Your grandfather's machine is inspiring a new generation of agricultural innovators. Thank you for making sure it ended up in the right hands. I hung the photo in my workshop, next to a picture of Grandpa and me standing beside the combine when I was 12 years old. 1 year later, I was back at the farm. Sarah had invited me to Thanksgiving dinner, our first family gathering since the auction. The conversation was awkward at first, but gradually warmed as we shared memories of Grandpa. After dinner, I walked out to the back field where the combine had sat for so many years. The space looked empty now, just tall grass swaying in the November wind. "I still can't believe it," Mike said, joining me. $15 million for that old machine. "It was never about the money," I replied. "Grandpa taught me that some things are worth more than their price tag." "Yeah, well, easy to say when you're the one who got the money." I turned to face him. "Mike, do you remember what you wanted to do when you were 18? He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You wanted to study veterinary medicine. You were going to be a large animal vet, help farmers take care of their livestock." His face softened. "I couldn't afford vet school. Had to stay and work the farm." I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket. "The Earl Thompson Memorial Scholarship isn't just for 18-year-olds. We're starting an adult learner program next year. Full tuition, living expenses, everything." Mike stared at the scholarship application I'd handed him. "Jake, I'm 45 years old." "So? You think it's too late to chase your dreams?" Tears welled up in his eyes. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it." As we walked back toward the farmhouse, I felt Grandpa's presence in the evening air. He'd known exactly what he was doing when he left me that worthless combine. He'd given me more than money. He'd given me the chance to make a difference. Sometimes the most valuable gifts come disguised as broken-down machines in overgrown fields.